Hello and welcome to the video. This is a video in my series looking at modern helis. Now this is an OMPHobby M2. You've probably seen it in lots of other videos. This is the one that I'm using for this. Need to give a massive shout out to Steve up at Scotia RC who supplied this helicopter. This OMPHobby M2 is a fantastic model if you are a multi-rotor pilot and you want to kind of give this stuff a go. It has everything you need to really get you into this part of the hobby with a minimum amount of hassle. So a big thank you to Steve. Links to Scotia RC at the bottom. Now, if you check out that playlist, you will find I have already set up my multi-protocol module using a little receiver plugged into the side of the Flybarless unit that's at the front of this model. And that requires an awful lot of work, creating multiple curves for both the pitch and the throttle. And some of you probably found that a little bit overwhelming. I really like that as a heli pilot of old because it allows me to tweak things like the head speed to what I want, to things like the pitch range to maybe calm things down. However, as of version 1.3.2.77 of the multi-protocol software that lives inside these radios, you can link directly to the Flybarless unit without using an external receiver. Now, the setup is a lot simpler as well, but you do lose the ability to change how the helicopter behaves, because what OMPHobby did quite cleverly is apply all of those curves and all the mode settings and the gyro gains and all that stuff is managed inside the Flybarless control unit itself. So you don't need any of the curves or anything on the radio. You just need the 4 basic controls and an additional 3 switches to control the mode, what kind of support you're getting the Flybarless unit, and also for a throttle cut as well. Now this is all covered in the documentation for the multi-protocol stuff. So if you go in there, it actually shows you exactly how everything should be laid out. But I thought, while I've got this in, let me actually bind to this thing and show you how to set it all up. One word of caution before we get too far into this. Whenever you are doing anything like this and playing with a multi-protocol module and moving switches and things around, I would take off the main props and also remove the tail prop as well, because you will have it running on the bench because you need to test things. You don't want to accidentally get in a situation where you hit an idle up switch and this thing then wants to go and take off and destroy the room that you're setting up in. There are scars that I still have on my arms from the very old heli days before we had things like computer radios with throttle cuts on. I had an incident where I was carrying my radio and I popped it down on the bench while I was putting the blades and everything sorted out. And as I was taking the heli out to the flight line, my radio fell forward, the throttle started, and I had to try and hold on to the thing while the blades were screaming. So be very, very careful. These blades are very thin, and when they're moving at speed, they will hurt you. So safety warning, whenever you're doing this, remove the blades. So the first thing we have to do is look on the radio that you have that has a multi-protocol unit inside. What we need to do is to check whether or not you have a version of the multi-protocol firmware that's later than version 1.3.2.77. And you can see here mine is much older than that. If it's much older than that, then as you go through everything, you will not see the OMP protocol listed. So that's something that we're going to have to update on this radio in order to connect to the model and fly it. Now take note of the channel order on this screen. Mine is AETR. There are going to be several different versions of the firmware you can download. You need to download the same version with the same channel order as the one that's already on your radio for everything to work okay. So we need to visit the download page of the multi-protocol project. When you are doing this, please make sure that if you're using this stuff and you're getting benefit of it, stick Pascal and the team some dollars. I definitely have done this. The multi-protocol module stuff is one of those projects that we're starting to rely on in the hobby, and it needs to continue to develop and grow, like, for example, adding the OMPHobby stuff. So To remind myself how I did the update, I'll confess, visit one of my old videos. I'll put a link down to it below, which actually talks you through the process, but let's do it very quickly here. So I visited the download page. I'll put a link below to that too, and selected the radio multi-protocol module that I have. Then I chose the version that matches my radio. Again, that's AETR. Then, once that was downloaded, I copied that into the firmwares directory on the SD card of the radio. Plugged the SD card into the radio, powered it up, just confirmed I had the right channel order. It is AETR that I want. It's important that you keep the same channel order, and then long press the system menu to go into that, tabbed into the SD card folder, then went into the firmwares directory, then selected the file that I've just saved, long press to flash internal module, it's the internal module that I want on this Radio Master, and then it's going to do the update. It's going to take about 45 seconds, a minute, so just make sure that there's enough battery so it can complete everything without failing. Once it's finished, then a long power cycle of the radio, and you're there. So now we've got the module updated, let me go through how the model itself is set up. Again, the channel order for how the OMPHobby protocol is laid out is already nicely covered in the documentation that's for the multi-protocol project. So let me show you how I've set this up on the radio for it to work. Again, the details are actually listed of the channel order in the multi-protocol module documentation, but let me show what I've done here, because this is working really nicely. So I've got a couple of models on here. There are 3 switches that we need to add. One is going to be responsible for the 3 modes, which is your normal mode, idle up 1 and idle up 2.
Idle up 1, idle up 2, idle up 1, normal.
There's also one which is for the throttle cut.
Throttle active, throttle disabled.
And then the last one is for the gyro modes, which is either 6G or kind of 3D.
3D helicopter, hover mode.
And those are the 3 extra ones. So let's go into the model stuff. Again, we've obviously bound to this thing via the OMP protocol. Be aware though, definitely you want to go and do the radio frequency fine tuning thing. Again, I'd recommend you doing that without the blades installed, just in case something happens when it loses connection. The idea is that the RF chip in the 4-in-1 module might not be exactly where it needs to be. This needs to be done so you get maximum distance and the best possible signal to your helicopter. You don't want to lose control over it, because when a helicopter crashes, really bad things tend to happen. So if we go through the individual things, obviously we haven't done any of the heli setup because we don't need to, because this is a flybarless heli, and this is more about the swash setup. Again, I have a video on how you do all that, I'll link below. And then we have no flight mode set. The inputs, standard inputs for the 4 main controls, haven't done anything in here apart from what I've done is I've added a little bit of expo to all of the controls. I think there is some expo already in the actual controller, the Flybarless controller on the M2 already, but adding this just calms it down, just makes it a little bit easier to fly. And I've also turned the trims off. That's really important. The Flybarless controller is expecting middle channel position to mean that you're not moving around. In the old days, we would use trims to kind of get rid of problems. When using a flybar unit or a flight controller, trims are bad. And I've added a little bit of expo to the aileron elevator, a little bit less to the rudder. So let's get rid of that. So you want to add a little bit of expo. I would put about 25%. So you want it looking like that. So that's what the inputs look like. The outputs are again aileron, elevator, throttle and rudder, and then I've added an additional 3 switches, just like you would do in any other open or HTX radio. So the channel 5 needs to be throttle hold. When channel 5 is in a high value, the throttle is disabled.
Throttle active, throttle disabled.
When it's in a middle or low value, then the throttle is enabled. You definitely want to set up your throttle cut, has to be on channel 5. It's essentially like an arming switch, think of it like that. Do it that way round, so in a high value is throttle cut, and then what I did actually reverse the channel so that when the radio comes on, by default, the throttle is disabled, which is the way I want it to be. Next one, channel 6. This is the idle. So this is the one.
Idle up 1, idle up 2, idle up 1, normal.
That changes the way that the model flies. In normal mode, it has kind of a throttle curve that ramps up gently, and then it also has just a little bit of negative pitch. It doesn't use full positive pitch. Then idle 1,
idle up 1, idle up 2,
and idle up 1, idle up 2, and then the ones where the head's going to go like Billy-O give you much more both positive and negative pitch to allow you to do acrobatics. So
normal.
Low channel value is normal mode, middle channel value is idle up 1, high channel value is idle up 2. Last one then is the mode, and this is the mode for the onboard gyro. There's only really 2 modes. One is for the full 6G mode in a low channel position, which is you kind of the maximum amount of help.
3D helicopter.
And then you can go into kind of 3D mode. So there's kind of 6G mode.
3D helicopter.
And 3D mode. So 6G mode is in a low channel position.
3D helicopter.
Middle and high positions will turn off kind of the extra help. So that is how all those are set up. There's no curves, there's no fancy flight modes, none of that is done. That is all I've done. Obviously the other thing I've done is in special functions I've set up so that when I put the switches in the positions that I need, it announces to me what is going on. So that is how the radio is set up and bound to the little M2 using the OMP protocol. So again, I've removed the propellers for this and we are set up with the OMPHobby protocol selected and we're ready to hit the bind button. So we're going to press the bind button with everything powered up. We're going to press and hold it until we hear some beeping, and we're going to hit the bind button on the radio. It'll say binding. It'll take a second and then we'll get lots and lots of beeps and we'll get a bit of head movement on the M2 to confirm that we're all working. And if we move the controls, there we go, everything is set. So that is how you do the binding. And again, this is exactly why we're being careful here, because the head is now running and you don't want the blades on this, because if it starts up, then you're going to be in a world of pain. So with it all bound, everything is working great. A couple of quick tips again. Do remember to reverse the throttle cut channel, that's channel 5, so that in the default position when the radio powers up, throttle cut is enabled, just a safety thing. And also don't forget to go through the fine tuning pieces to make sure that you have the best possible signal with your helicopter, so you get the best possible range and the best possible connection to it when it's flying. So thank you again for sticking with the video. Do check out the other ones in the series. Links to everything that I've talked about in the description below. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.